my wife and I met, we were joined at the hip, and we both knew we wanted to have kids. It's always just been in our DNA and our path. And so once we decided, we're very, granola, hippie, new age, organic, so we first tried, we tried the standard approach like most people try to make babies, but we realized that, it wasn't working out. We weren't able to get pregnant. And so we spent, we tried for 6 years essentially, just trying, different things, naturally just getting everything handled. We did Mayan abdominal massage, we tried everything. And then, eventually we're like, all right, this isn't working. Let's go to plan B, which is kind of the traditional medical route here, in the States especially. And so the first route typically is Clomid. So we did a couple cycles of that, but my wife's really sensitive and it just really threw her off, just her body and her hormones and everything. And, I was really fortunate to have a discussion with a client who's a close friend of mine now, who had triplets via in vitro. And the discussion he had was like, hey, Tom, you gotta, figure out how far you're willing to go. Because when, for those out there who are not able to have kids, naturally and conceive, typical, you go through Clomid, you go through in vitro and kind of the quote unquote standard approach. But the problem with that approach is you can spend $100,000 and you can do that easily and still not have a family, still not have a baby. There's no certainty in that process. And so I had that discussion with my friend, and, he kind of, suggested the idea of like, how far are you willing to go? And what are you willing to do? And so my wife and I talked, and we realized we weren't willing to put her body through the emotional and physical stress of going down that route, plus the uncertain, spending, if you will. And so we opened ourselves up to adoption. And, we both share the same mindset. We're like, there's so many kids out there that just need love. And that's it. And I mean, they just need a chance, and I mean, back in the days, hundreds of years ago, when someone's parents, died out in the wild or working or whatever, the village raised them. And it wasn't even adoption. It was just like, hey, this is what we do, And so we opened ourselves up to adoption. And so after doing 2 cycles of Clomid, it just threw her off so much. We're like, all right, this is the path we're going to take. We're going to adopt. My wife is a high follow through, high fact finder. If you're familiar with Colby, that's kind of what the profiling system we use. But she got the paperwork done in record time. They were amazed. And so we went down that road. And a couple of funny things happened when we first started going into adoption. And this is something I love to share, because when it comes to adoption, you and I had this chat, and there's so many people that say like, oh yeah, my wife and I have talked about adoption. And it kind of stops and ends there, right? Like, oh yeah, we've considered it, but no one knows where to start. There's a lot of unknowns. The world of adoption is a topic that people know extremely, little, close to nothing about, unless they have been directly involved in that world, like anything. And so, we get the same 2-3 questions from people all the time. Oh, what if they change their mind, right? Oh, if you have an open adoption, does that mean they can just come and hang out anytime they want, drop in and have dinner with you? There's a lot of misconception and false beliefs that people have. And the lack of uncertainty and the lack of knowing where to go to get that clarification keeps the discussions that people have simply to, oh, maybe we should adopt. Oh, would it be great if we adopted? And then it kind of stops, and the buck stops there, if you will.